Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalrin and I've been playing Outlaw since the beginning of BFA, and for the past 4 days of this video going live, I've been enjoying it tremendously. I've been doing as much PvE content, from heroic dungeons to mythic dungeons to all the world quests in the world to other PvE content like islands for example, and I feel like I've gotten a fairly decent grasp so far on the Outlaw Rogue spec. While streaming, I get a lot of people asking me what are the best stats, what are the best talents, what kind of rotation do you go for, and which Azerite bonus traits are the best for Rogue right now if I want to play dungeons. In this video I want to give you guys the basic PvE guide, kind of like a very early PvE guide of what I've been able to see so far, and from all the information I've been able to collect off of other websites like Ravenhold for example, a great place for you to get some information. Also Icy Veins, another great place for you to get information, and compile all that with my personal experience together in this video to give you guys my talents, my setup, my rotation, and everything you need to start playing Outlaw in BFA for PvE. So without further ado, let's just jump into this video so you guys can get yourself out doing dungeons, raids, and whatever content you end up getting into in regards to PvE. Alright, let's first talk a bit about the stats. The stats I felt like in previous expansions were a little bit more explicit. If I were to look up stat videos from Cataclysm, Mr. Pandaria, even to Warlords of Draenor, a lot of them would tell me exactly the stats that I need. They would say you need this much haste, certain amount of mastery, maybe this much crit, and it felt like it was a lot easier to figure out exactly what you needed in terms of stats. As of Legion, and certainly in BFA, stats like secondary stats are a lot more fluid, so depending on what kind of gear you currently have, they can change. So let's say 1 week you might need a certain amount of haste, collect a bunch of haste gear, now you need a lot of mastery, collect a bit of haste master gear, now it says you might need more crit to be more optimized for your character. So to keep up with the stat optimizations for your character, it's best to use some kind of a sim bot. I like to use Raid Bots. It's a fairly easy to use website. You just plug in your character, your region, and your server, and you just get your stats for your character currently with the gear that you have. They also have a fairly nifty add-on that gives you a lot more detailed information for a lot more uses of the website, like maybe getting you and helping you choose what is the best gear that's currently in your bags, and it's all for free. And you can use these websites in order to figure out your stats. The TLDR version for my character currently, it seems that having a better weapon in main hand is going to be tremendous increase in DPS than anything that has agility. Afterwards, critical strike and haste, and then versatility, and then mastery ends up being the worst stat, but this of course changes if I were to go from Roll the Bones to maybe someone like Slice and Dice. In this part of the video, we'll be taking a look at the Outlaw Rogue talents to see which talents are the best currently for PvE. When we take a look at the talents, we're gonna have them coming in this row. In level 15, I like this one the best. I played around a little bit with Weapon Master, but it feels like Quick Draw with the extra damage and extra common points. This one synergizes really well with some of the gear and is simply easy to use and feels like this is the most potent. Level 30, you can choose really any one of these options. Hit and run is nice if you need a little bit extra mobility through the fights, but if you're somebody who is doing dungeons and raids, and let's say there's a lot of fire on the ground and you need to reach the boss without having to run into the bad stuff, this actually works well in a lot of the dungeon mechanics. Retractable hook if you really need that mobility on demand. At level 45 right now, Vigor is the only talent that does the most amount of damage for you. Technically you can play with Mark for Death if you're able to use it, like Mark for Death Run Through or Mark for Death Dispatch, Mark for Death Dispatch, but Vigor ends up being the best one in the long run. At level 60 for solo content, I like Iron Stomach, but when it comes to actually putting content, Cheat Death might be the best, but generally none of the dungeons currently so far, until we get into the Mythic Plus version of them, really do enough damage in order for me to die. At level 75, you can either go Prey on the Weak, which can work in some dungeons where mobs need to die, and as an Outlaw Rogue you will be using your stun quite often because it does a good chunk of damage, so you get to use this a lot. But if you're somebody who's pushing higher content, Dirty Tricks might end up being better because being able to use Gouge within dungeon content and even out in the world can help you interrupt certain spells that would otherwise kill you or your party. At level 90, Alacrity ends up being the best. Really, level 90 Rogue is a question of roll the bones or slice and dice. You will want to end up playing with roll the bones if you want to play Outlaw Rogue and do serious amounts of damage. If you're somebody who wants to mess around with Outlaw or keep it as a secondary spec, slice and dice is fine. You will have to get slightly different stats for the rest of your gear, but currently roll the bones is the build that does the most amount of damage. And if you do want to go for the most amount of damage with Outlaw, you will want to go with Alacrity. At level 100, you should go with Blade Rush. Right now it's a question between Killing Spree, between Dance of Steel and Blade Rush, but Blade Rush ends up being the happy medium between both of them. Killing Spree ends up being great on-demand burst whenever you need it, and can be great in terms of cleave when you're trying to burst multiple targets that need to die very quickly. With a 2-minute cooldown and cooldown reduction mechanic, this doesn't seem like a bad option at all. Dance of Steel ends up being better for constant cleave if you're always AoEing targets for an extended period of time, and it ends up making kind of the difference that Killing Spree wouldn't as a burst ability. Blade Rush is the happy medium of the consistent damage and the burst damage. It has a nice burst effect, can do burst damage to everybody else, fairly short cooldown so you get to use it often, has a charge mechanic so you can kind of charge to a boss from a distance, and allows you to generate 25 energy over 5 seconds, giving you more energy, especially with the amount of haste that we get right now, which is very low, which might be kind of detrimental to some extent. So these are probably the best talents that you should be running right now for both PvE, but whether it's dungeon content, whether it's world content, in order to get used to this. And for the most part, you don't really change the talents that much, which I think why Outlaw is very versatile in Mythic dungeons and might be the most versatile spec in Mythic Plus dungeons. In this part of the video, we will talk about the rotation. And the rotation for Outlaw is going to depend on how much energy you have and conditions. The main ability you will be generating common points with is Sinister Strike. This ability is your bread and butter. Whenever you have too much energy and need to generate common points, Sinister Strike will always be the best ability to dump your energy into a common point, as you'll use those common points to generate other finishers. Another ability you can use instead of Sinister Strike is Pistol Shot, but only if you get a proc for it. The proc makes this ability half cost, so only 20 energy, and adds a little bit more amplified damage, so you'll want to use it whenever possible. The way both of those abilities play is with energy. If you're drawing way too much energy and you cannot get rid of it, always use Sinister Strike in order to be as energy efficient as possible. And only use pistol shots when you're not anywhere close to overcapping on energy. Outlaw is all about being as efficient as possible with your energy, as it will generate more value for your spec, more value damage, more value common point, and resource work. When you build up 5 common points, you feel free to use one of 3 finishers. One is Roll the Bones, the other is Dispatch, and then you have Between the Eyes. Now all these abilities are also conditional. The conditions for Roll the Bones is keep rolling Roll the Bones until you have Grand Melee, Shark Infested Waters, or any 2 buff combination. Once you've done that as a priority, feel free to dump majority of your finishers into 5 common point dispatches. If you get the Shark buff, this means that you'll have a lot more crit. That means that your Between the Eyes is more likely to crit. Between the Eyes deals a lot of damage, but only when it crits. So if you have the Shark buff, feel free to use Between the Eyes on cooldown whenever it's available at 5 common points. All your cooldowns for Outlaw Rogue, whether it is Killing Spree, whether it is Blade Rush, Adrenaline Rush, most of those you basically want to try to use on cooldown, and that's really it. Just spam them on cooldown whenever they're available to give you more energy, more damage. Unless you're running Killing Spree, then you don't really want to overlap Adrenaline Rush and Killing Spree together, as both of those abilities kind of just counteract each other if you use both of them at the same time. Outlaw Rogues don't really have a perfect opener, but the boys over at Ravenhold.net came out with a cool opener that I think you guys might like in dungeons if you're trying to maximize the use of your rogue. At 1 second before the pull, you want to pop Adrenaline Rush and all your potions, all the different buffs that might increase your damage, then drop your character into stealth right before attacking a boss, so you want to be a fair distance away. You want to open up with an ambush, vanish, ambush into Blade Rush in order to get the most amount of burst in the opener. And then from there you want to, roll the bones to see if you get a buff. Once you get good buff, you want to continue building common points with your Sinister Strikes and Pistol Shots, and using your finishers like Between the Eyes and your Dispatch depending on the situation. And that's really how you play the spec. In this part of the video, I want to talk a little bit about the different traits that rogues have and tell you which ones I liked, which ones I didn't. The ones that I liked were Deadshot for between the eyes, making your next pistol shot do more damage. This actually can net insanely strong results and plays very similar to the braces we have with Outlaw, but it plays even easier because we don't have any of those blunderbuss procs. Brigand Blitz is also another good one that I've been using on my gear, where Adrenaline Rush will give you haste that stacks over its duration. Extra haste with gear that barely has any haste right now can feel really good, and I absolutely love this one. Another trait that I'm enjoying right now, and a lot of the middle ground traits that are not really Outlaw Rogue specific, usually the 4th trait in your outer ring, are actually really strong. The one I'm using right now is called Filthy Transfusion. It gives me a little bit extra shadow damage and acts kind of like an extra trinket from time to time. There's a lot of those that are actually very powerful, and a lot of those I would kind of sim for single target. If you do want to sim the best Azure traits for your character, you can also use the same website I talked about before, raidboss.com, especially with our add-on makes it that much easier to sim your character and find out what are the best pieces of gear you can wear in your character right now to net you the most amount of damage. Very easy to use. Again, the add-on link should be in description below, unless I missed that as I'm making this video at 5 in the morning. And hopefully this is everything I needed to talk about for this video. This is the very first, very beginner Outlaw Rogue guide for PvE, and I feel like I will make updated videos and updated guides for Outlaw, as well as the other specs, as I get to know them and as raid gear starts to come out, as we get more and further access to our necklaces, which gives more access towards our Azure bonuses. But this should do for now if you're somebody who wants to get into Outlaw Rogue and start doing some PvE content and you're just trying to figure out where should you start and how should you play. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Big props to the boys over at ravenhold.net, as I have a lot of great information. I'll probably have their link for their guide down in the description below if you guys want to read what some of the other Outlaw Rogues are planning and scheming, as well as an Icy Veins link. It's always good to have multiple different websites to kind of cross-reference and see what one website is doing, what the other website is doing, and to find out the most information. But hopefully this gave you guys enough info to kind of kickstart your journey into Outlaw if you want to get into it. I do want to check out the other specs, but first I need to get the weapons for them, and I'm desperately looking for some daggers. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what your thoughts. Let me know which spec you want me to cover next if I do end up covering another for PvE. Thank you guys, and I'll see all of you in the next video.